Groco Type K marine toilet rebuild. The reason why we did this is about an hour into our maiden voyage after buying it, the swab broke the main pump handle. Luckily we just jammed a steel bolt in place of the bronze and it was able to function for the 4 days down. But although we're going to try to weld the other one, we just bought a new, it's been painted white, of the main pump handle here. All the rest of this has been sandblasted, taken down to bare metal, degreased, and painted with an epoxy, two-part epoxy paint. Let's see. Also, going to replace, this is the shaft for the main pump handle. It looks, I actually, in diving deep into the boat, found an even older one, so it's been rebuilt before. This looks like brass or bronze, probably bronze. It's corroded. Someone had replaced it with a newer part, which is stainless, but they must have had some particulate matter or something got in there, some grooves, real fine, just barely catch them with your fingernail. So we just ordered a new one, perfectly polished, not too expensive, from Groco. So this part's also been changed. This is the main piston. There's a newer version available. In taking the measurements, there's some pretty heavy corrosion that's pitted, and it just looks like it's going to be very abrasive on the cylinder walls. So went ahead and got a new one. Looks like it's identical, except for how there's this bolt protruding through the top, which does not exist on the older version. On the main cylinder sleeve here, there's a lot of corrosion in this top 2 inches where the piston doesn't even run. We took that down using just a cheap automotive cylinder hone on a electric drill. You got to be careful with that because you don't want to bore this out. Really, I was just trying to smooth it off. The reason is there was so much corrosion and deposit here that the diameter is actually smaller in this top section, and it's more polished down here where the piston's actually been moving previously. The problem being the new piston with tightly fitted rings wouldn't fit down in, and you want the rings to be as expanded as possible. So we just took just a hair, mostly corrosion, off in this first 2 inches so the piston would fit down in. The section where it's actually making a seal with the cylinder wall there is pretty smooth and didn't require much. I put a little bit of polishing compound and smoothed it out a little bit, try to extend the life of the new rings. For every bit that cylinder is oversized, you can't buy an oversized piston, so there's going to be a little extra slop and the lifespan is going to be a little reduced. And when I first bought this new, I just went to dry fit it, obviously upside down here, and it dropped all the way down with almost 1/16 of an inch gap, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be, it's too corroded. I'm going to have to buy that whole base unit, which is somewhere around $1,000. Didn't want to do that. And then somewhere online I came across the instructions of how to fit this, and I think the last person who rebuilt this did not do it correctly. If you dry fit these without doing anything, they're going to be too small. So it actually tells you to get you use a metal plate or something like that, and you hit these with a very smooth hammer. You just tap it very gently all the way around, a couple taps, trying to be even with how much you hit. And it's actually going to thin this out, but as it does so, the diameter, the radius is going to increase. Everything thread size, you want to clean up all the threaded areas, which of course I did after I painted it, so it was very difficult to measure. So there's 5/16 by 18. So down here on this flange is 1/4 by 20. On the back is 10 by 24, and then the drain, both this drain and the one here on this 90-degree elbow, it's pipe, so it's 1/8 by 27. Okay. Reassembly. What I can tell from this diagram is it looks like this goes in that way. So like I said, the rings are pretty tight, so I'm going to have to manipulate this down in. The piston just seated in an inch or so, and looking through the back, you can see, so that whole arm coming down has to bend and fish backwards. Actually quite a bit easier than expected. It just fell right down in there. Alright, so we've got it lined up, and then taking the larger of the two, these rubber seals, using a good marine synthetic grease, we're going to press that down. It's pretty easy, and then grease the whole shaft as we press it into place. And once we get it there, there's this bronze bolt, which is to tighten. We've got it fitted. About how far down you want to go, you can see this is the main pump arm here. It's going to sit flush against there, so it's about the right depth. That you can also see that the stainless steel shaft running through there is just going to run right against the wall, the side wall of the main pump housing here. And then this is a pretty tight fit on mine, even with that that bolt loosened. It kind of pried it. Once I get the shaft set, I pried this to center it. You want to avoid any kind of torsion on that lever arm. I'm trying to attach the inlet lever here. Let's see what they actually call it. It is the pedal, number 37. So this shaft and the new one is stainless steel, and the other one was bronze, was heavily corroded. Inside looks okay, and when I try to fit this really tight fit, it was rounded off from the factory, and I thought maybe when there's a divot stamped down in there for where a set screw goes, that maybe it flared out, so I rounded it off a little bit more. Still doesn't want to fit. Went back and measured. This one is 0.55 diameter, that is 0.50. Even with the corrosion, I measured sort of the wider unaffected areas. So my hope is, if I remember right, the old lever was a little loose in there. Really the watertight seal is this rubber on the outside, where it's going to be running through there in the sidewall. Those are just guides. It's basically a bronze bushing. Little rubber mallet, little grease. Our luck has held out. It's just a very tight fit. Next is the cam. Orientation, pedal installed, set screw lined up with that little indentation. Another confusing thing I haven't figured out is this piece of thin cellophane or something can go in between these two, and from what I understand, it's if the toilet's going to be not in use for a while, maybe it keeps this rubber from adhering to the bronze and tearing. The orientation here, let me grab one of these. This is just another spare I have, is flapper hanging down, bronze in towards the cam, and the rubber side back, and then I did add that thin cellophane one. 4 screws tightened. They're stainless. Part of me wonders if they were originally bronze, although they're pretty thin, and there's a fair amount of torque. It's kind of, I found some washers also in the spare parts box that probably came from there. I don't know if they were bronze. You never want to mix metals, but technically should not have any water on it. Minimize the corrosion there. Okay. Next part, spring, which will hold this in the up closed position. Something else, if you look at the gasket, it is not oval. Luckily, even though I had polished this up, you can see kind of how it fits there. So I'm not sure why they chose that shape. Maybe it cross-references to another part that's shaped that way. But so as it's laying there, you can see with the pattern, that's how it's going to fit. Got the elbow installed. Next, I went ahead and purchased a new one. The old one gives you an idea. This has actually been soaked and power washed. It's just unbelievably caked. I mean, it's scraping that with a screwdriver and it's just not coming off. Cheap plastic part that cost way too much money. You can see part of the actual mold down inside, right? My finger is, there's a lip. There's one on the other side as well. I took those down with a file. It's actually protruding almost 1/8 of an inch. Which looks like, you know, it's just going to impede flow and probably catch a bunch of sediment there and start the process of looking like the old one. So, the way this goes, joker valve, this is something you change all the time. So, Joker valve goes inside, flange, bolts right up. Okay, drain plugs reinstalled. And this small bolt threads through there. Basically, it's just a stopper to keep that ball from floating up, sticks in there. To explicitly state, you put the little rubber ball that's a check valve down in there before threading that screw in. By using a flathead, you can see you can move those just a little bit, or dental pick, a little bit of tappage. Eventually it's seated down in there. You can see it's also threaded conveniently for one of the bowl bolts. Give you a little bit, you can either pull it out that way, or just a little bit cant it one way or the other while you're tapping to ease those down. I did end up with this. Don't know where that goes. That must be where it goes. Okay. Reassembled for the third time. I have this spring sandwiched between this rubber and the rubber, it's the rubber washer there. So because the flapper valve, spring, rubber washer, brass washer, screw, and I think that makes the most sense. There is a notched indicator, and it should just press, unless I damaged it here. May have dinged the, oh, there we go. That's in place. And the main bowl gasket goes.